All right, everyone, please welcome onto the podcast today Donna Burbank. She is the Managing Director of Global Data Strategy and an instructor for us here at TDWI. She's going to be teaching a couple courses at our upcoming conference in Orlando in a couple months. I'm very excited to have Donna on today. We're going to talk about master data management, a subject that she's well versed in, and I'm excited to hear her thoughts. But before we jump into everything, thank you so much for joining, Donna. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on this. I'm enjoying it.
Absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, we want to hear a little bit more about master data management when we have this conversation, but I always like to start with a brief background with my guests so our audience members can get to know you and your expertise a little bit. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. Probably like a lot of folks, it wasn't a completely straight path to where we are with data. And I find that interesting. A lot of people in data didn't necessarily start in data or didn't think they started in data until we realized so much of what we do is data. And I guess that was my case. So well, full disclosure, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now. So I feel like I've earned my scars and battle scars throughout. But way back in the day, I was an economics major, and my first job was working in a think tank down in Washington doing econometric analysis, which I guess I was a
Wow.
data scientist back then. I guess they didn't have that word, but I guess that's what it was. And then I realized economics is cool. I didn't really want to have to go back and get a PhD. And so much of what we were doing was data. And I really delved into that. And I enjoyed, we were doing a lot of programming then and went back actually and got another IT degree. Thought it was that fun. And I'm glad I did because the trajectory was really up. I guess since then, I really, that first job I had, I didn't realize how rare it was that we would ask questions to the business and who might have been the State Department, the Pentagon, and tried to solve them. And then I went to wanting to get more technical, went into some really techie roles and just sort of missed that whole so what, if you know what I mean. And then sort of found consulting, which I really love, which is what I do now. I run a small boutique data management consultancy called Global Data Strategy. We do that globally. So I've kind of lived all over working with companies on all continents now,
Wow.
doing consulting. And that's really my passion is, and I think that economics did come full circle because it's what we try to do at Global Data Strategy is really get to that. How do you drive the business with data? And I think we finally find our time because that is just ubiquitous now where it wasn't 10 years ago when we started this. So I'll take credit for that. That's me saying it now. So that's sort of my story. I guess I left out a stint in the middle where did a lot of actual product development with a lot of the data management tools in the market. So actually a big chunk of my career with metadata management, data modeling tools. Folks know probably Irwin, ER Studio, some of the metadata repositories. So I think that's a nice background of implementing at clients, but also knowing how the sausage is made and how everything fits together. So kind of, can't get the nerd out of me, but I also have a business focus, which I guess isn't rare. I guess that is data. That sums up data of it is, and I guess, maybe for any kids on the younger folks on the call, I always felt growing up, you had to choose, like either you're going to go the business and, one of my degrees was actually English. I like writing, right? Or go technical. And I think the beauty of data, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this, is that it is absolutely both. And I think that's what, a lot of, I'm rambling a bit, but so a lot of the folks I know who do data, they have music degrees and just a lot of
Mhm.
different, but the way you can put things together and those connections, I think that type of brain is really good for data and sort of was a circuitous journey to get me here, but it's been fun. It's been a good ride.
Well, that's amazing. And yes, you're correct. A lot of my guests have kind of that, meandering path, if you will, or not necessarily a direct line to where they are now, especially in the space as it's changed over the years, as you so eloquently put there. And obviously for our audience, you can see why we have Donna on. She has a wealth of knowledge and experience in this area. My first
I'm a data
question, Donna,
geek. Just say it. I'm a proud data geek.
which is awesome. And I think that's the majority of who we like to talk to on this podcast. So you fit the mold to a T. But I do think it's a good place to start as we get into the topic of master data management. If you wouldn't mind sharing, maybe a definition. I know it's hard to define necessarily. Everyone might have their own definition of it, but if you can explain what you think, in your terms, master data management is and why it's so important, I think that's a great place for us to start.
Yeah, no, great way to start. We're a industry of definitions, and we're often really poor at creating our own definitions, right? And I think, what I've always tried to do in my practice in my life is just try to take complexity and simplify it, right? And master data management is the most obvious, simple thing, and it can be complex. But I think we always start with the complexity, really. And a lot of my clients now are using the term core data, and maybe that's a little bit more descriptive. It's the core master components of your business. So I always say, describe what you do for a living. And it might be, I'm a company that sells products to customers and locations around the globe, and then take the nouns. Well, that's product, customer, location. It really is the absolute essence of the big building blocks of data that run your business. And that does get into the complexity because they're so ubiquitous, they're also touched by a lot of people, right? And used and consumed. So product data, customer data is everywhere, and that's why it's a little bit harder to manage. But to understand what it is very clear, but it confuses a lot of people. So I think maybe something like core data, or just giving examples. It's or I gave kind of a retail example. It's citizen, it's student, it's patient, it's intellectual property. We work for a patent office, and what they did for a living was intellectual property. That was their master data. And I actually not I have a slide actually that I've had fun over my career, pictures of all the things that were master data, from cows to cow suits to chickens to cars to all of that sort of stuff. In the different companies I've worked for, what they do for a living basically is the master data that's running the company. So hopefully that makes sense.
Right. And obviously that's you can see why it's an important facet to any company these days, especially in our industry. So I'm assuming, based on that and how ubiquitous, as you've mentioned, it is, most companies have some sort of master data management initiatives going on right now. Is that actually the case? And why would that be the case?
Well, I may be a bit facetious. You may be doing it, but not realizing it, or not doing it well, right? You have master data. No matter what organization you have it. Are you managing it well, is the question, right? And I think what I find fascinating, well, two things. Yes, I've been doing this for, I guess, again, almost 30 years. And I would say the past five, the demand for pure play master data, where folks call us up and say, I need master data, or even use those words. Whereas before, we
Mm.
sort of had to lead people to those words. People absolutely know what the problem is and need help solving it. Has more people are doing it. However, I'm still never surprised anymore when I go to insert big brand name we all know here, and there's Mary in the finance department with a list of all their suppliers, or even where, and I will not mention names to protect the innocent. I am not kidding. Massive retail products where their product list is in a spreadsheet somewhere, where
Yeah.
Joe, who if Joe retires, it's gone, right? So I think companies have it, but I think, and do folks manage it well? And we'll get into that most likely. It's because it's touched by so many people, and it's a people, process, and tech problem. And is Mary in accounting, that has the list of all the suppliers, enabled to launch a fuel initiative? No. So she just does it as best she can, because it's not rocket science. It's not that it cannot be solved, but it needs to be treated like a program, like anything else that's ongoing, and treated with a full a full effort. And that's hard for anything. So yes, and I think folks are a lot, actually, where a lot of companies come to us is where there's sort of that inflection point of scaling. What
Mm.
got you here isn't going to get you there. And I will never forget this one. It was I will not mention the brand. And it was a bit of a tough guy, and he was kind of proud of it. And he was a billionaire who started this company in his basement. And I was trying to explain why he needed master data. And he literally said, "Are you a billionaire?" "No,
Oh.
sir, I'm not, or I wouldn't be talking to you," right? But and you're telling me how to run my company. And I was proud of myself for thinking on the feet. And I said, no, but if you want to scale to 2 billion or 4 billion, the way just like anything else, your manufacturing process is going to scale. You need to scale your data management,
Mm.
because it's going to slow you down. And he actually stopped, paused, and goes, "Ooh, that said that way, I get it." And I think a lot of companies come to us just at that point. It worked. And I would say, don't do it too early. If you're a startup and you're just trying to get product out of the door in your basement, you don't need a full scale master. A spreadsheet's probably fine. Don't quote me on that here, but at certain point, you can't grow to be
Mm.
is efficient, and really, think of a lot of the companies, not our customer, but Amazon. I've purchased this, I want to purchase this. You can't do that without good master data management. So you're not going to be the big behemoth if you don't have your core master data right. So yes, everyone's doing it. No, not everyone's doing it to the full efficiency that they could probably be doing it.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I'm not surprised to hear that you're still encountering all these businesses, large or small, that are, working in their little siloed environments, and even on spreadsheets, as the world has been, for a couple decades now. I guess the next question that I have for you is, what challenges do these companies face as they try to implement master data management in the formal terms sense as we're talking about here, moving from that, maybe those older systems into something a little bit more engaging and wholly involved for the business? What are those challenges?
I think the main challenge is that it's multifaceted, and it's just the human brain. As soon as you get into I'm getting nerdy here, an and condition and not an or condition, people can't process it. It's something about us. We can handle one thing, but you show two or three things at us, and I don't know, we just can't handle it. So successful master data, and that's not just me saying it, the Gartners of the world, the Furches are also saying the same thing. Where master data fails, it's when you're not looking at it holistically. To have successful master data, you need, yes, the technology and the architecture and your data models, but also business process. Who is putting that data in, and where are they putting it, and why, and what? Because something like, I'll keep using retail, apologies, but that's so everyone understands that, because your product and your customer are being touched at several areas along the journey, more, you know, opportunity for error. We had one massive restaurant chain, they lost $1 million because their pricing was wrong. And when we went to help fix it, it was a process issue. Supply chain had created the price and marketing had carried the price, but they weren't communicating. And that's part of the process. And then that leads to the third leg of the stool. If the first was technology, the second is business process, the third is data governance, right? Who owns or manages or is accountable for your product and your customer? And I will fight anyone on the call who wants to email me. It's an and condition, not one person owns customer. And I've seen that as a trend that sort of bothers me, of, because it's important, we're going to have a single owner for customer. Really, does marketing own that, sales, product development? Think of a patient, right? I go into the doctor's office, there's someone, a clerk, who takes my insurance, my address, and my phone number. The doctor has my what do you call it, what's wrong with me, my diagnosis. I hope you don't mix those two. I hope the person getting my insurance isn't accountable for my diagnosis.
Mhm.
And I hope the doctor, who's very busy with other things, isn't worrying about my insurance information. So when you explain data is your business, right? So once you explain it that way, it makes so much sense that there's not one owner for patient information, right? Or for customer information. So that's why you need to understand that. And that example, the business process is really simple. I went to the doctor's office, then I went to the doctor. There's 2 steps of that process, and there's owners at each part of the step. But imagine massive international manufacturing with global, supply chain points. It gets more complicated. But no matter how big or small, there are at least 3 of those, and it's the business process, the governance, and the architecture. And just like anything, it's so easy to throw a tool at it. And generally, you need a tool. You don't always. We fix things with just a better business process. But don't start with a tool. Even if you're going to buy a tool, you need to understand that architecture and the governance before you implement it. That makes sense.
That totally makes sense. And it actually leads me nicely to my next question. I was going to ask about data governance and kind of it seems like, I'll just ask the question here. What role does master data management play in data governance initiatives? Or is it more important to govern master data management data? Like, you know what I'm saying? It seems like you have to balance both of those things.
Yes.
Maybe you can help me trying to figure that out.
No, the answer is yes. How's
Yeah,
that? Or even better, I'll do the consultant answer. It depends. No, it's absolutely. And that's why if you get too academic about this stuff, your brain can start to hurt. Like, it's a chicken and the egg kind of thing, and you'll never
exactly.
get an answer. So it's both. It's hard to do good data governance if you don't have centralized data. So we're working with a massive international company now who's trying to implement data privacy laws globally. You can imagine, and if you don't have a single view of either the companies you're working with or the contacts or the people, how on earth am I going to mask PII data or personal identifiable information for people? You just can't. So it's hard to, you can do governance without master data management, of course, but it is most effective. And it's not everything. I don't want to make people think, and that's why maybe some people stall. So we can never do anything with advanced analytics or exploratory without doing a full, master data project for. No, it is those core business building blocks, your customer, your patient, your student,
Hmm.
all of those, and because they're touched so many places. So I would say eventually with governance, you're going to need some mastered, or we haven't mentioned, I'm really getting nerdy now, but the reference data, which is kind of the cousin of master data. Like, do you even have your state codes, or your region codes, your country code. I mean, the number of problems with even like, are we using the 2 or 3 character country code with ISO or something? Like, they seem so banal and boring, but they will mess up your business if you don't have it right. So don't let the boring stuff mess you up. That sounds like a great quote. There's a bumper sticker there. Don't let the boring data stuff mess you up. But then I think the more important and maybe overlooked is that it's impossible, I will say that, to do master data management without governance, because it is a people issue. Who, just give that simple doctor example, who owns patient data? Well, it depends. It does depend, and you need to really think that through, and somebody needs to take ownership for it. And generally, when you explain what it is, people are fighting for ownership for it, right? So people can say, oh, isn't that an IT problem to fix the data? Great, so I'm going to set the payment terms on your contracts with your customers. No, well, that's a data point. I hope you want to own that. Oh, yes. And then once people, and that's where, if you demystify master data, it is key to everything. And then once people understand that, you're going to have to push people away for wanting to be involved, because it absolutely drives their business. And so I would think it's yes to both. I think the more important and maybe overlooked one is the second of, it's hard to do governance without data governance. It's hard to do master data without data governance.
No, thank you. I know that was a kind of a tricky question, and obviously
Oh.
there's a lot of meat on that bone. I feel like we could do a whole podcast on that question alone.
Hard to shut me up when it comes to data.
No, no, but I think you did a great job of answering it, because it is a tricky, chicken or the egg, as you rightly put it.
Well,
Um,
and just to jump in, I would just say, if I give one word of advice to us data people who love to get academic about these things, and I think the way to demystify all of that is just to say, for example, and just walk through it, and then it becomes so obvious and easy, and we tend to forget that in our, I'm looking at the DAMA DMBOK wheel, and does data quality come before master data, and do I do metadata before master data? What's the difference? And by the time you have all that conversation, especially in front of the business, that you've lost them. So I like to say, let's see how a product is made and how we manage the data for that. Then all the other stuff needs to be done, but you start with the so what, and then add the data. Because I think so much of it, yeah, you could get me talking about the difference between master and metadata for another 2 hours, but we tend to overdo that a little bit. So I like to give the,
mhm.
for example, or so what, because
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't matter and sometimes it does, right? So you got to pick your battles, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think use cases are always, they speak right to the point. They get right to the point for whatever level of knowledge that you have in the industry of data and analytics. It really cuts right to where you want to get to. So I'm curious, moving into like more of the maybe exciting or futuristic kind of things that might be on the tip of the tongues of most people. What role does master data management play in new initiatives such as AI and generative AI?
Yeah, no, awesome. Getting a lot of interest in master data for that very reason. I would say a lot of the flashy stuff we see, the generative AI, is more on like videos and unstructured data, which is sort of outside the realm of master data. Master data is typically your structured data, my customer name, address. The holistic domain of customer has pictures of the customer and things like that. But master data typically seems to be from your ERP systems, your billing systems, all of that. That said, if you are doing any advanced analytics on data, you want to make sure it's trusted and vetted, or that seems to be the garbage in, garbage out, right? So actually on the TDWI analytics, you had a summit on retail and CPG, and we gave a really good, the royal we gave well, we collectively, TDWI and I, gave a case study of Mintel. They do market research, and they published a lot of their data on their website. To do that, they needed master and reference data in order to order and structure the information, which was both structured and unstructured. Once they did that, they actually did amazing things with generative AI, but it was the building blocks to even organize your data. And as a lot of folks realize, if you are publishing a model or an AI, especially Colorado, where I'm from, just passed a new law on being able to show the lineage of that. If I denied someone a loan or a job or something based on an AI model, where did that data come from? You can't, it's not an A to B mapping, but even knowing it came from our trusted data sets is pretty important. So I think folks are getting that, whether they make the direct connection to master data or not. And to be clear, not all of the cool generative AI, a picture of I don't know, chicken riding a horse. That's not typically master data, but the core data of, are you going to deny someone a loan? That is. So I think just being clear on that, the classic garbage in, garbage out.
Absolutely. Well, we only have a few minutes left here, Donna, And I would love to have you talk a little bit about the coursework that you're going to be doing, that you're going to be teaching for us in Orlando here in a couple months. Can you tell us a little bit about what your class will be covering in Orlando? I know you're teaching two. Maybe you can take us through some highlights of both.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the big one, which is an afternoon session that relates to this, is the Master Data Management course. In the morning, I'll be doing a data governance course. And as we just talked about, they're related. But the Master Data course, this is the first year we've offered it at TDWI, and we've gotten some really great feedback for the few we've run this year. We had a couple quotes of folks like, "You finally explained to me what master data was," because what I do in the course is just keep it real, and most of it comes from my experience and my practice as a consultant. And we go through some case studies, some real world examples of how. In fact, one of the kind of the examples we do is we'll go through problems of like, is that a process problem? Is it a governance problem? Or is it an architecture problem? And we really break it out. And so many people have said that was the huge light bulb of you have to really look at it holistically. So that course really does that. We have a whole section on the architecture and hierarchies and data types and all the things you need, but there's also a section on business process and how you map that to data, and another one on governance specifically for master data and how you put those three together. And then the morning course is just a deep dive right into governance itself. So.
Well, that's fantastic. And as a reminder, the course in the afternoon that Donna was mentioning is Master Data Management, intersection of architecture, governance, and process, as she so eloquently just explained for us there. Donna, it was an absolute pleasure talking with you today. As we close, I'd love for you, if it's all right, for you to let people know where if they're interested in reaching out after they listen to this, following up with you, if there's a good place for them to contact you.
Oh, no, that'd be great. I am on LinkedIn, Donna Burbank, which is where a lot of people find me. Also, their company website, Global Data Strategy, is just Global Data Strategy, all one word.com. Or I'll just put it out there as a risk. I'll probably get some spam from this. If you want to just email me directly, it's just Donna, Donna.Burbank, Burbank, at globaldatastrategy.com. And so, yeah, I'm passionate to hear about this, or if you need help implementing your company, happy to help with that as well.
Terrific. Again, Donna, thank you so much for your time. This was an absolute pleasure. Hopefully we'll have you on again in the future. I know you're a valuable member of our TDWI instructor staff, and well, hopefully you have a great time in Orlando there. And for all those folks, I will put a link in the description of this episode if you're interested in seeing more information about the course we just discussed. But thanks again, Donna. Hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thanks. To subscribe to the Speaking of Data podcast, or to learn more about TDWI's research and training on all things data management and analytics, visit tdwi.org or click the link in the description below. Thanks for tuning in.